Do 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 do. Oh, look, new Quackalope video.
Aeon's Trespass Odyssey might be the worst game we have ever played.
Whoa.
What? How dare they? They don't know what they're talking about. I better leave a comment. You guys are stupid. And send. That'll show them. Boy, nothing like some good old drama to get me back out of a video hiatus. First off, Quackalope, if you actually did click on this video, I hope you understand the intro was a joke. Definitely a joke. I don't think you guys are stupid at all. I think you guys have done a lot of good work for the board game industry and getting people in the hobby and stuff like that. But it did sort of the last, for those who don't know, sort of what this video is going to be referencing. Quackalope did make a couple of videos on Aeon Trespass Odyssey, one positive and one talking about the negatives of what they sort of thought. And it's definitely, at least from what I've seen in the Into the Unknown Discord, it's definitely sparked some controversy, but I think it opens up a little bit of a broader topic that that sort of sparked my idea for this video, about sort of content creators in general, and I think consumers and their need to be a little bit more cautious when watching videos from their favorite creators and even creators that they don't like. So this is going to be a little bit of a rambly video. I only recently just finished watching both of the videos through because obviously I didn't want to sort of nitpick, and I'm not going to nitpick the video, to be honest. I'm going to reference a couple of things here and there probably, but this isn't to rip Quackalope's video apart because I don't think they deserve that. I don't think they deserve the hate that they're getting in the comments, even though that I think they purposefully brought it on to themselves a little bit with how they framed the video. But they don't really deserve the hate that they get in their comments. I think that you can definitely be critical of someone without being, I guess, emotionally charged. And I think that they do have some things to be critical of. For example, I personally don't agree with how they disclose sponsored content, but I think that's a little bit of a broader thing as well for content creators on YouTube in general, because I don't think the board game scene has really caught up with sort of some of what is, I guess, in my opinion, industry standard when, especially like on the video game side of things, even though I think they're, one-on-one in terms of content creators and how they present content. It seems like a lot of the stuff, isn't standardized, in which it should be, specifically because the FTC or the Federal Trade Commission actually deems it necessary from influencers to disclose sponsorships properly, which, Quackalope's not the only one. I think Play on Tabletop has actually did a recent video with Apex that wasn't very clearly what I assume is a sponsored video. It definitely comes off as a sponsored video. I think Man vs. Meeple did one recently on Dead Cells where the disclosures in the About section, and they've used the paid promotion little tiny tab that pops up in the corner for a little bit on YouTube. But even the FTC has agreed that, stuff like that isn't adequate amount of disclosure. You need to disclose it audibly and visibly, at the start of the video and at the end of the video, in addition to the other stuff that they're doing. Like it needs to be pretty much guaranteed that the viewer is going to know that it's a sponsored video. And it seems like the board game content creators don't really know about that, and maybe it's just a matter of the FTC cracking down on stuff like that in the future. But it is a really, really big problem when it comes to how many board games are out there and how niche and I think small the scene is when it comes to content creators who review board games. I don't review board games. I give my first impressions here and there. But I think that was sort of one of the things that I noticed in Quackalope's video in the first place was their review in the positive video on Aeon Trespass Odyssey was not a review at all. And I think it's dishonest to have the word review in a thing that clearly hasn't been thoroughly explored enough and presented enough to be called a review. It could be their positive first impressions. I think that's definitely reasonable with how surface level that video was. But I think it also is interesting, and this only popped up right before I started recording this video. According to Into the Unknown Studios, they did get in touch with them asking for sponsored content, and it seems like the deal sort of went south. And I would be surprised if Quackalope actually published the negative video had they been sponsored by Into the Unknown Studios. But who knows? Like maybe they would have. I don't know what the contracts look like. And to anyone who's wondering why I'm speaking about this and why I think it's important to, is because I work in the industry. I work in terms of the equivalent for video games. I work specifically with influencers on the video game side of things on Twitch and YouTube to help promote video games. My PR company, well, not my PR company, the company that I work for, we've worked with the likes of Sega, THQ Nordic, some of the biggest names in the game. And I have worked on some of the biggest games launched on influencer campaigns, both paid and organic. So I sort of know what I'm talking about in that sense. And I think it's an issue that I've noticed in the board game community, and especially with how people approach their board game content creators, because there really aren't that many out there. Whereas opposed to the video game scene, there's tons of really, really high quality video game content creators. Plus, not to mention, it's just not as much of a niche thing than board games is. So I think it's a little bit easier to get a broader scope of different products and how people feel about them, where it's a little bit tougher to do that in board games, especially when people aren't properly disclosing their sponsored content. And I think that comes down to the consumer. Well, not the sponsored part. That part should be on the creator. They should properly disclose things. But I think it's our job as consumers as well to really broaden our scope and really hit multiple areas of people expressing their thoughts about products to get a better idea of sort of what that product might be and if or not you're going to enjoy that product. Content creation, I think, is very, very difficult. I think it's 10 times more difficult if you're trying to create as a business, as Quackalope is. So that's why I don't think they deserve a lot of the hate that they get. You could definitely be critical of them on some things, but I don't think they deserve a lot of the hate that they get, because they are a business at the end of the day at this point. They have, Jesse has employees that he has to pay to keep producing content. And, he has relationships he has to, uphold with publishers to keep getting more sponsored content. So, more power to him. I think that's great that he's been able to turn a hobby into a business. But I think people just need to be wary of that. And, even myself, I am just one voice about these games. And I specifically state in my about section, I'm just here to speak about what I love. So you're going to gravitate to that as a viewer. And you're naturally going to gravitate towards creators who enjoy the same things that you enjoy, to be aware of more things that might come along the way that are in line with what you enjoy. And so, it's definitely good to, be attached to certain creators that align with your views, but you don't owe the creator anything, just like they don't owe you anything. So if you're not happy with a creator, you don't need to type in the comments. You can perfectly voice your opinions in the comments in a respectable manner, but you don't need to hate on them. I think just, vote with your attention. Don't watch them, unsubscribe to them. Viewers, content creators will change over time. Sometimes you might not like their content at one point, and maybe you'll like their content, in the future again. Who knows? And you can resubscribe then, but you can vote with your attention. But there are other avenues that I think are important to explore when looking at new products, like Board Game Geek and Reddit are like my favorite ones, because you do get a lot of different voices, you get a lot of different opinions about things, and you sort of get the broader picture. And it's not really necessarily about you trying to find a voice that aligns with your initial impression of a product. It's more about you just getting a broader scope of the product and getting a well-educated and well-reasoned look at something. And I don't think Quackalope did that with the Aeon Trespass Odyssey videos. They claim that they, of course, I don't doubt that they'd put 40 to 50 hours in, but I don't think the quality was there. I think that it's a problem on both sides. And Trespass Odyssey was such a big game, and they're a business that has to churn out a certain amount of content in a certain way that I don't think fits with what Aeon Trespass Odyssey needs. And I think they actually recognize that. They touched on that in their video, talking about how big the game is and how unwieldy it is for them to table. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. But, they definitely approached it improperly. I think, you can definitely tell the negative video was more emotionally charged than the positive one was. And I think part of that maybe was because they weren't sponsored, and Into the Unknown Studios did decline their offer. We'll never know, but just looking from the outside in, that's, again, my opinion. But Aeon Trespass Odyssey doesn't need you to defend it. it's a very, very niche game. People like myself are going to fall absolutely in love with it. And I can recognize there are definitely issues with the game. But you know, you don't need to dive into videos that you don't agree with and leave negative comments on their videos, because speaking as someone who definitely stepped away from content creation in general, I've had just overwhelming amounts of positivity on my videos, and that I wasn't expecting. But even then, I had to take a break from creating content about board games because it got to be a lot of work. And to be honest, I had some very, very tough anxiety issues about it, and I definitely have had to do some self-reflecting and stuff like that. So it's one of the reasons why I have not come back to creating content yet, but I'll probably come back at some point. Don't know when. But content creation is very, very difficult. People put a lot of time and effort into what they do, and a lot of them do it for just the passion of it, like I do, and don't need to worry about taking a break about a month at a time, 2 months at a time, or more. But then you have people like Quackalope or Board Game Co. who do it full time, and they need to do certain things to play the YouTube algorithm, and not a lot of people are going to agree with that. I don't really agree with it, but I know, especially working in the industry, you see it a lot in the video game industry as well, on the YouTube side of things. It is what it is. But that's pretty much all I want to say. I just wanted to make my opinion about sort of the topic about board game content creation, sponsorships, and buyer beware, because I think it's especially important. It seems like in the board game scene, seems like a lot of the safe, safety nets that sort of the video game industry has sort of been able to take a hold of over time hasn't really caught up to the board game scene yet. But maybe when the board game scene grows, maybe when more content creators are starting to get more sponsorships, things like that, I think that'll be something that the FTC might notice. And it's a very, very important thing because it keeps consumers safe. Because if someone is going to make a sponsored video and they want to keep a relationship with their publisher, they're inherently going to be more positive than I think they were. I think that if there's contracts being thrown around, I doubt those clauses like there are in the video game industry, where it's pretty industry standard to have clauses in the contracts to properly disclose sponsorships. But not only that, that the creator is actually allowed to have honest opinions about the game, and they cannot be penalized for having negative comments about it. And I think maybe the board game content creators don't really understand that that should probably be in their contracts if they aren't, and that it should be sort of an industry standard where that is in place because it protects everyone. And I think it's good. I think it's good to have content creators being honest. But I think Quackalope, in the way that they presented their latest videos, not that maybe it was honest, maybe that's truly how they feel, but I think the process in which it was published and sort of the way that it came about might not have been great, especially with what the Into the Unknown Studios has said on their comment section on Kickstarter about their previous deal and declining that deal. But yeah, I think I'm done. I don't want to stir up any drama. I hope Quackalope takes this as a proper critique, because I don't really hate them. I honestly think that I just think that they could be better, just like a lot of the board game industry could be better when it comes to creating content for consumers. And that's just one thing I noticed, and I wanted to, these recent videos just sort of sparked, I wanted to make a video on this actually for a long time, but this video sort of inspired me, I guess I should say. So yeah, stop sending hate to people. They're just trying to do their job, and sometimes they're just trying to do what they love. And even if it doesn't align with what you feel about a product, you don't owe that product anything. You don't need to defend that product. Sometimes it's easier and it's better for everyone just to sort of step away from the keyboard and, go for a walk, do something that you enjoy. No need to put hate out into the world, or negative thoughts, because I guarantee that content creators do read the comments and they do take a lot of things to heart, speaking as one. So until next time, I don't know when that's going to be, but we'll see you then.